Shalom, Peter. Today is the night, the evening of Hanukkah. Hanukkah is the holiday of light. It's the holiday that we would like to believe that the powers of light shall overcome the powers of darkness. This is how I'd like to begin a continuation of our correspondence. This will be a video, diary, letter. And before I come to the international, I would like to stay a bit in my own home, in the national, and try to set the setting for this story that you asked me to participate in. I'm Yehoshua Zamir, 73 years old, living for the past 47 years here in Kibbutz Ein Dor, at the foot of the Tabor mountain, not far from Nazareth. Actually, these days are very significant for me because 49 years ago exactly, on Thanksgiving, I skipped ship in order to enter Palestine illegally and do my share in what I believed and still believe was the building of a Jewish homeland that would answer the needs of the Jewish people and the Jewish culture, and at the same time make a haven for all the Jews that were left after the Nazi massacre. So these are exciting days, these are meaningful days, and to talk about the international without setting the background is not proper. You, Peter, will choose from this diary, from this letter, which I send you and hopefully to my dear friend George Stoney. I'm sitting in my room. I'm doing my own video. I'm doing my own diary. Instead of writing, I'm talking. I've got many things to tell you. I like this particular setting. I like the background. In order that you'll know a little more, I'm going to get up and show closer up what is here. I'll get going soon. It's difficult for me to start once more to get back to the video diary. Recently I've completed my part in a very significant diary, a video diary, part of a movie that will come out at the beginning of the next year called Peace Chronicles. 3 Palestinians and 3 Israeli people. We have documented each in our own environment, in our own setting, in our own home, what occurred to us personally or to our friends during the peace process, which began on the 13th of September 1993 up to the exit of the Israeli army from Gaza and Jericho. It was very important for me to participate in that peace diary, because it was a continuation of many of the things that I've done ever since we came to this place here in the Lower Galilee, to try to prove that it is possible to live together, Jews and Arabs, on this piece of land here. And we succeeded here at the foot of the Mount Tabor, not far from Nazareth. When you go up on this hill and you look around, there is a fantastic, a beautiful sight, an endless psiphos of landscape, different colors, a mosaic of nature. And in this very, very landscape, there is a more beautiful and a more meaningful mosaic of human nature, of human people. Because on these grounds, from the Tabor, you can see Jews and Arabs, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Arabs who are from as Bedouin, as city dwellers in Nazareth, Arabs who are of Druze origin. There's even one of the two only villages of Cherkess people, and Jews of all kinds, from all countries of the world, living in close proximity here in all kinds of human settlements, from cities that are known to all, to kibbutzim, collectives, communes that are known less. And we have succeeded to live together here for the past 47 years that I know of, and it is possible to live together. In a couple of days here in Endor, we have an archaeological museum. Usually archaeology is thought of something that has happened in the past. But in our particular case, this museum is very special in that it is a living museum. Every day now, children from all over the country, again, Jews and Arabs, they come here to the museum to make olive oil, because we have here the implements that were used to make oil from thousands of years ago. And the children learn, Jews and Arabs learn together what it is to make your own food with your own hands and appreciate the lore and the customs and the tradition and the culture of the past. During the harvest season, they come here to learn how to make bread. They go to the field and with their hands they pull out the wheat, and they go through all the process until they make the flour themselves and crush the wheat grain with stones that are also thousands of years old. And now, during this week of Hanukkah, the holiday of the light, the victory of the light over the darkness, we hope, we are opening in the museum a very special exhibit called There is a Time for War and There's a Time for Peace. And the special character of this exhibition is that the curator decided to choose weapons of war and games of peace. And so side by side in the museum, people will see what everyone knows: swords, knives, arrows. That people know about. But they will also see many games that were played thousands of years ago There's even one game that there's a board with a design on it, and no one knows what the game was, and the the visitors will be invited to make up their own games. And again, at the opening, there will be members of our kibbutz, members of the neighboring villages, and again, a dream that I had, that our museum would be a place where we'd learn not only of how people lived together in the past, but we would learn and we would meet with different cultures that exist here in our neighboring vicinity. Again, Jews and Arabs, Ethiopians, Russians, and Europeans and Americans, all together, learning to live, to know each other, and on this holiday, to play. It's interesting, as I'm saying this, I recall that as a child on Hanukkah, we always played, but we used to play with a svivon, a top, and it used to be for money, because Hanukkah was a holiday where money was given to the children. And now there will be other games, games of peace. I'm going to say something about, well, it's not simple to take your own photograph and be in focus and get the right light and not shine in your eyes, but I'll come back to where I would like to be with you. Actually, what you wanted is you wanted to know what my connection was or is with the anthem, the International. So to tell you what the International meant to me, I would have to try to tell you what my life was, since I've wandered quite a lot. I suppose the first time I met the International was as a young boy, 13 years old, in Tel Aviv, 1934-35. I belonged to a Shomer Tza'ir, which is a Zionist socialist youth movement, pioneer youth movement, which was very different from all other youth movements that I know of, in as much as we were a movement that was built on self-realization. That meant that if you belonged to a Shomer Tza'ir and you went through the years of the youth movement, the ultimate ideal, the ultimate aim was to realize the ideals that you spoke about. And if those ideals were to build a homeland, to participate in a socialist commune, a commune where equality and mutual responsibility were part of the daily life, where one earns his living with his own hands or mind, or hands and mind, but does not exploit anyone else. So you continue to be in that youth movement. If you do not realize what we called Hakshama Atzmit, then you just, you leave. I'm talking about the 30s. Things changed as time went on. During the days of the 30s, a boy of 13, 14, I already was leading younger children as a youth leader. And I suppose I accepted a lot of things. I liked being in Hashomer Tza'ir because I grew up in a home that was religious, and belonging to Shomer Tzair was one of the ways in which I could revolt against religion that was more or less forced upon me. I did not want to be religious. My brothers were already not religious. But I had to fulfill my duties and reach the bar mitzvah age. And so that's what I had to do. And I've got to check if this is okay, if we're on business or what. Yes, we are. As I said, it's not simple to do your own movie, but we'll manage. So I guess I sang the International just like I sang Techazakna. Techazakna was the hymn of the labor movement. It's a song that was written by Bialik, and that was an anthem that we sang, and it was, of course, a song, let the hands of the workers be strengthened, and so forth. That was our Hebrew, our Israeli or Palestinian Jewish way of belonging. Hatikva, as you no doubt realize, was the national anthem, and we sang that. The truth of the matter is we had an anthem of the Shomer Tzair, which was Anu Olim B'Sharim, we ascend and sing. So we had already 3 anthems. I suppose as a young person, a blue shirt meant belonging, and singing these anthems was belonging, and that those were the days that our movement was looked forward towards USSR as a place where socialism was being realized, communism was being realized. And it was part of what we did. I do not think that as a young boy I thought too much about the meaning of this song. So at the age of 15, our family returned to the United States. I'm talking about 1936. Hitler was already doing his thing in Europe and Germany. We knew something about anti-Semitism. We knew something about things that were going on. And even though I went with my family, I was taken with my family back to the United States because I had come with my family to Palestine in 1927. Even though I went back, I did not want to go back. I went back because my mother asked that of us, and we did that for her. And actually, even though from 1935 to 1945, 10 years I spent in the United States, I would say that my physical being was in the United States, but my heart and my thoughts were in Palestine, later on to be Israel. Yehuda Levi has that song, my heart is Ani ba'marav, libi ba'mizrach, I am in the west and my heart is in the east. I'm not Yehuda Levi, but that was the truth. I believe that I devoted all the years from the age of 15, 16 to 25, I'd say that the main thing that I did was work for the Shomer Tzair, the Zionist youth movement. And I believe that being Jewish, being a Zionist, doing something to help build the Jewish national homeland was the most important thing. I don't think that in those days the International was sung very much in the movement in the United States. The reason is obvious. We had quite an argument with the communists, the Jewish communists in the United States, who claimed that there's no point in building a Jewish homeland because until the major problems of the whole world are solved, there's no chance of any homeland for the Jewish people answering any questions. And besides, they claimed that how could we ever build a homeland for the Jewish people in Palestine when the Arabs are there and we're doing a terrible thing by taking their lands away and actually exploiting them and taking their land away, their homeland away, and two wrongs can't make a right, and so forth. So our argument with the Communist Party and with the Jewish communists, wherever we were, uh, I would say that I can't recall singing the International in the youth movement in the United States during those years. I was born in Rochester, and my mother took us back there in 1935. I was a leader in the youth movement, Shomer Tza'ir, and I trained myself, and we trained others to be pioneers in the land of Israel. And soon enough, I finished high school, and I wanted to go on. I wanted to study agriculture, actually, and I thought maybe I could do that in Berkeley and in California, and I volunteered to actually organize a Hashomer Tza'ir group in San Francisco, which I did in 1940 together with my wife, Rama. And for the next 2-3 years, we worked very diligently in San Francisco, organizing young Jewish boys and girls to devote their life to the pioneering socialist, Zionist youth movement, hopefully to train in a collective farm in New Jersey, where we, in Hightstown, trained our people for commune living and agriculture. And of course, in 1941, the United States entered the war. And before that, I will admit that we came closer to the idea of the USSR because when at last Russia decided, or the USSR decided to fight fascism, I think we sang more the song, "If war comes tomorrow, tomorrow we'll fight with the USSR." I believe we sang that song. I don't recall singing the International even during those days. It can be mentioned now, and it can be found in the book that came out on the American movement, that the Trotskyites were very strong among Jewish young people, and they tried to take away our members from Zionism. But in the long run, myself and not too many, but enough American young Zionists came to this country and to Israel, to Palestine, at the beginning illegally and later on legally. I think we did whatever we could as Americans, as American Jews during the war. We tried to do our best. Many of us were soldiers. I personally was not. I was a shipfitter, shipbuilder, and I was not taken to the army. But I will say that those days of the awareness to the Nazi atrocities and my task as a human being and as a Jew did weigh very heavily on me, and I don't think that I spent those days of youth, as a young man, enjoying whatever America could offer. Of course, during the war, there's absolutely no reason to believe that that's what one would do, but I know that I felt very, very involved and very responsible to do whatever one human being can do to help build a country where the Jews could go to. However, when I came to Palestine at the time, I vividly remember what the 1st of May was. And I'd like to say something about that now. 1945, the British were here. Uh, they were actually fighting us as Jews, were not allowing us to come to this country even though the Holocaust was known behind us. There was no place that wanted to receive the Jewish people. And the 1st of May, I recall the 1st of May in Haifa, where I think thousands and thousands of members of our movement, the Histadrut, marched throughout the city with red flags and banners, singing songs of work and labor. And I believe that at the end of such a parade there was a general meeting and the International was sung. And when I sang the words at that time, no doubt I felt that they spoke to me, because I felt as a worker, I felt that I would like to do something against the British colonial policy, and especially against their anti-immigration and anti-Zionist policies. So the International spoke to me as a Jew, as a Jewish person. And I think I listened to the words, and I think that they meant something to me. Our kibbutz, Endor, actually we're 47 years here, but 10 years before we came on the land, those who began this particular kibbutz lived in a moshava, which is like a small city, a large village. And our members were very active in the labor movement, in the labor unions. And the members of our kibbutz fought the exploiters and participated in strikes. And when there were occasions to sing the International on festive occasions on the 1st of May, there's no doubt that it was sung as part of our militant socialist workers' policy, hopefully to build a homeland and a country where the workers and the people who work would be the people who would share the wealth of the country. So that was another phase of life. And when we came here to Endor, we found ourselves in the midst of Arab villages, Arab community. And I think that even though I cannot pass over the fact that the war took a heavy toll not only on us, but also on many of the Arabs who lived here in the vicinity, quite a few villages, the members of these villages, chose, or in some cases were, I would say even suggested that they leave. And I know that this is something that requires a lot more detailed discussion. But the truth is that so many villages remained, and we are in such good relations with the Arab neighbors that we have here. If there are Christians or Muslims or Bedouins across the road here, Shibli, if it's Kfar Masar or Daburia, our children relate to them, they have common activities. We have friends, Kibbutz Gazit, which is another kibbutz, participates and has many relationships with the Arabs in the neighboring villages. So because so many Arabs remained here, I do not accept the blame that we chased the Arabs away during the war. The war took a toll, and many, uh, many Arabs left because they succumbed to two things: to fear, and that is true. They were afraid that perhaps uh, things would happen to them by the Jewish uh, soldiers, as happened in that terrible village near Jerusalem. Uh, and or in some cases were, uh, I would say, even suggested that they leave. And I know that this is something that requires a lot more detailed discussion. But the truth is that so many villages remained, and we are in such good relations with the Arab neighbors that we have here. If they're Christians or Muslims or Bedouins across the road here, Shibli, if it's Kfar Masar or Daburia, our children relate to them. They have common activities. We have friends. Kibbutz Gazit, which is another kibbutz, participates and has many relationships with the Arabs in the neighboring villages. So because so many Arabs remained here, I do not accept the blame that we chased the Arabs away during the war. The war took a toll, and many uh, many Arabs left because they succumbed to two things: to fear, and that is true. They were afraid that perhaps uh, things would happen to them by the Jewish uh, soldiers, as happened in that terrible village near Jerusalem. Uh, and On the other hand, there were many who left because soldiers from the Jordanian army came and suggested to them to just pick up and come to Jordan, which is not far from here, less than 20 kilometers. And in a couple of days, the Jordanian army will come back and they will get not only their land, but all the rest of our land. This is not an easy topic or a simple topic to discuss, but the fact remains that many Arabs, many villages are here, and if they chose to remain, it means that others could have remained had they uh, done what the Arabs in these villages did, and that is to accept the fact that the land that was bought in this vicinity by Jews belonged to us, and if they had not gone, things could have been different for them. At any rate, Kibbutz Ein Dor, and I'm proud to be in this kibbutz, has maintained a policy of coexistence, and many of our members have been active throughout the years in the Peace Now movement. During the Lebanon War, many activities of protest against the war were carried out by our members. And I would say that the International was sung on the 1st of May every year for many years. And we always had rallies in the kibbutz with people from the neighboring villages. And this went on for many years. Now, the truth is that as time went on, there have been many changes in the country and many changes in the attitude of people towards socialism. and communism, and no doubt to sing the International here in Israel after the Six-Day War, after the October War, the Yom Kippur War, was really something unthinkable when the weapons that were aimed against us came from the Arab, from the Soviet Union. And so that was a period where, of course, belonging to and singing with the International was not very popular. And of course, after it was found out, after Khrushchev days and the atrocities of Stalin, obviously, to sing the International was not something that someone wanted to know of. Maybe asked why, if so, what is my interest in this film that is being done on the International? And I believe that I would like my children, I'd like young people to know that there was a time, that there was an anthem that people all over the world sang. And people, young people and older people that believed that there could be a different kind of a world where people would really share and would work for each other. And what I'd like to do now is to read something that was written to me by a man who is no doubt the best versed in everything that has to do with songs in this country. His name is Eliyahu HaKohen, and I'd like to read what he has to say about the International, because there are many things that he writes that I am very much in agreement, and because of his knowledge, I think that his ideas should be shared by others. So he answers my letter, in which I asked him to say whatever he could about the International. Shalom, Yehoshua. This is September 3rd, 1994. Thanks for sharing with me your correspondence with Peter Miller from New York concerning the film on the International. His concept is excellent from every possible viewpoint. If it will be done well, film-wise, it will have, in my opinion, excellent distribution and circulation, not only in the general public, but also in the academic and institutions, as a documentary source for a very important song and many songs, and serve an anthem milestone of an international movement. There are not many songs in the entire world that were sung with such ardor amongst peoples and nations from east to west. I believe the time has come to make an interim summation and look backward via the words of the song and its performance throughout the years, and to examine what this song has done to the hearts of people. There are still millions of people who sang and recited this song in almost holy spirit of sacredness, and knew and recognized every note and apostrophe, and identified themselves with it. This proletarian anthem allows us today to view with greater objective perspective and sovereignty on the ideas of innocence and naivete that were expressed in the song, and what was a dream, ideal, and for many still remains an ideal to this very day. It would be worthy to interview the loyal and those who have changed their mind, the jealous and the fanatic, and those whom this anthem has led far beyond its original goals. I believe an entire chapter could be devoted to the Jewish connection to the International and to the frustration here in Israel and Palestine about its place, and to the many battles that were fought because of this song, including wars of the Jews amongst ourselves. Then he goes on to tell about his own very particular interest and study that he has done on Hatikva, and I will leave that for another time and go on with what he has to say on the International. In this respect, the International has an even greater potential to gather this kind of material, and it is interesting that both songs, Hatikva and the International, that not only reflected history, but also made history, were composed more or less at the same time. The International was written in 1871, and the first version of Hatikva was written in 1878 in the home of a Jewish baron in Romania. I will not hide from you that the International was a foreign seedling ever since I could think for myself, especially because of all that was done in the world in the name of equality and progress. The words and sayings of the prophet Yeshayahu warmed my heart much more, as did some of the pearls of the songs and poems of Zion. I will never forget nor forgive, if I may add as I translate Yehoshua, how an entire Jewish culture was obliterated and destroyed on the other side of the Iron Curtain by the people in power whose anthem and leading song was the International. With the Russian Revolution, the Hebrew script and letter disappeared. The Hebrew printing and publishing institutions were shut down. Silenced were the Hebrew creative cultural centers in Kiev, Odessa, Moscow, and St. Petersburg. The Hebrew press was forbidden to publish, with the exception of the Sovjetische Heimland, which was something ordered by the government. I recall how the aged Hebrew poetess Bat Hana would correspond with me and send me secretly Hebrew songs in calligraphic handwriting with full punctuation. And I would ask our mutual friend Yaakov Gutterman to write for me in Cyrillic letters her name and address on the envelopes. She published songs like these in the early years of this century in various Hebrew collections. But ever since the revolution, she could no longer publish them, with the exception of a few songs that she published in a collection called In the Beginning, Breshit, that came out in Berlin in the year 1926 after she succeeded in smuggling the texts and camouflaging her identity. And on the title page of the book it was written, printed in Kiev, whereas it was actually printed in Berlin. The destruction and the abolition of the Jewish culture exemplified the words of the International, "We will destroy the world," or as my neighbor translated, "The world of yesterday shall lay in ruins." The innocence and naivete bred the idea that with the International, man will become a higher creature, a more benevolent creature. However, those who sang the International learned soon enough that the man did not reach those heights. But on the contrary, man has been humiliated and lowered, and the nation of slaves remained a nation of slaves. though a different kind of slavery, which only outwardly was egalitarian, under the watchful eyes of the great and kind father, the son of all peoples, Stalin. In the International, it was stated well, however, in reality, the leader of the socialist peoples was at the same time the sole and single ruler who was also the king, hero, and almost God in the eyes of millions, including many of our own Jewish people. Therefore, I was glad this song was not included in my singing repertoire, even only if because of these associations. However, there definitely is worthy of spreading light on this entire chapter in a film that will tell in detail its history and represent the hopes and expectations that existed in the past. Yehoshua, thank you once more for the material you sent, and allow me to greet you and your family at the onset of the new year, and let us hope that we are really on the threshold of a new period with good tidings that we are waiting ever since 1898, the year that the very first song. At this stage, I'd like to sing the song in Hebrew, the International. It's interesting that a Russian immigrant, who now is a member of the kibbutz, Sergei, has recorded my mouth organ piece on the International, and that I will copy onto this tape later. But I will sing the words in Hebrew now. Kum hitna'era amchelecha amavadim unzera'av Eshan kamota lev lichecha likrat oyev yikon lakrav Olam yashan adei haisod nachriv mamigav kafuf nifrok ha'ol et olamenu az nakim ma lo klum etmol machar hakol זה יהיה קרב אחרון למלחמת עולם עם האינטרנציונל יאור ישגב הדם זה יהיה קרב אחרון במלחמת עולם עם האינטרנציונל יאור ישגב הדם קום התנער עמך לך הם עבדים זרעיו אשן כמות הלב לכך לקראת אויב היכון לקרב עולם ישן עדי היסוד נחרים מגף כפוף נפרוק העול את עולמנו אז נקים מה לא כלום אתמול מחר הכל זה יהיה קרב אחרון במלחמת עולם עם האינטרנציונל יאור ישגב הדם זה יהיה קרב אחרון במלחמת עולם עם האינטרנציונל יאור ישגב Well, no doubt, many times when I sang this song, I really hoped, I really believed that there would be a time that there would be no wars. I don't think that today I would agree with the fact that tomorrow will be everything and yesterday there was nothing. Uh, that's something maybe when we were young we could sing without thinking twice. Today I know that without yesterday, without the past, there is no future. And I learned this very heavily, with great difficulty, when my son Yaron was killed in the war, one of those wars that I'd hoped once or dreamt once that they would not be. That when your father passes away, you part with the past. When your mate passes away, you part with the present. When your son dies, you part with the future. I really hoped once that the world would be different. When I came to kibbutz, when we started building this home of ours on this small hill called Ein Dor, I had really hoped that we were building a society that would really be a prototype of the future society. That's what I had hoped. There was a time that I thought that we were pioneers, and we defined the word pioneers as those who are going at the head of the camp, at the head, and we would pave the way and others would follow. In truth, in reality, none of my children have followed the path that Rama and myself chose. And today, I don't begrudge them. I don't have it in any way against them, because I chose my way in life according to my beliefs, and they have every right to choose their way of life. They've been here, they've been in kibbutz, they've grown up here, and apparently not everybody can live a collective life. I do think, and I do hope, and I do believe that my children, wherever they are, Naomi, Gilad, Tamar, no matter where they are, they will always be decent human beings. And I'm proud of every one of them in their life. I'm trying to think again, why was it I responded so quickly and so favorably and so positively to your request, Peter, to react, to try to do something about the international? I think it has something to do with my children. I want to be sure that my children besides the stories they hear from me, will know a little bit more about people who had ideals, who were willing for their ideals to do quite a lot, if necessary, even give their lives. The tragedy is that people who sang the International went in 1936 to Spain, and many have given their lives. The tragedy is that the people who were in power in Russia, in the Soviet Union, were not worthy of the cause that people gave their lives to. I know that it's almost a mission impossible to try to teach younger people all over the world, especially in this country, try to teach them something about a time that workers all over the world really believed that they could stretch out their hands to one another and work together for a better world. It's so difficult to say those words because the First World War broke out when there were socialist movements all over the world. And still, in the end, the workers of various countries were willing to go to war, one against the other. I would like to take time in this video letter and speak with you, George Stoney, and tell you a little bit of where I am today. What are some of the things that I'm doing? And hopefully you will, in due time, send me a tape and let me see you and hear what you are doing. I tell many people about how we met. We're talking now about close to 15 years ago, when I thought that I actually gave birth to an idea that I thought was mine, which was that video could be used in the kibbutz to further and deepen communication. And what later on I learned was community video, or video in the service of the community, was unknown at the time in the kibbutz movement. And I had prepared a whole list of suggestions of how to do it, what it would bring about. And then I met you when you came to show some of the documentary films that your students had done in NYU. It was then in the French consulate in Tel Aviv. And I approached you after you finished your lecture and showing the films, and I told you on one foot, as we say, what my idea was, and then you asked me if I had ever used a video, and I said, not only I hadn't used one, I don't believe I even saw one. And you very generously offered to teach me the next morning at 7 o'clock. I came to your hotel, And you taught me how to use a video, and you even postponed your trip back to the United States, which was scheduled for the same day or the next day, and you came to Indore. And ever since then, we've been in contact, and we've exchanged many letters, and I was very thankful to meet you and be with you in NYU and see the work that you have done. This electric stoppage of light has got to do with the season that we are now at. This has been the rainiest November ever in Israel. We've had now in Indore over half of the yearly amount that we usually have until April or May in this 1 month. This has never happened before. And when it rains a lot, we have usually sometimes electric problems, electricity problems. So what happened to the idea of community television, community video in the kibbutzim? When I visited you in New York several years ago, quite a few years ago, I went to downtown community video in Chinatown, I believe it was. And many letters, and I was very thankful to meet you and be with you in NYU and see the work that you have done. This electric stoppage of light has got to do with the season that we are now at. This has been the rainiest November ever in Israel. We've had now in Indore over half of the yearly amount that we usually have until April or May in this 1 month. This has never happened before. And when it rains a lot, we have usually sometimes electric problems, electricity problems. So what happened to the idea of community television, community video in the kibbutzim? When I visited you in New York several years ago, quite a few years ago, I went to downtown community video in Chinatown, I believe it was. And even there, after a while, it did not work. And the reason that it does not work so well in kibbutzim is that it requires a lot of time, a lot of work. And actually what it requires is a basic concept of the need for communication and the need to allow people, even in kibbutz, access to the media, access to relating their thoughts and ideas and culture. And whatever the reasons are, that in the United States there are very few examples of community video really doing what they were intended to or dreamed to do. Kibbutzim are small relatively, and it's very difficult to find a staff that will carry this out. And more so, there is always this perfectionist, Fellini uh, complex that the people that are good at this profession, quote, they want to do their own thing. And very few are willing to devote their time to promote the community affairs. And in reality, there are many kibbutzim that have closed-circuit television, but most of the time just films, movies are broadcast, even though there are few kibbutzim that it is a bit different. We are somewhere in the middle. We prepare sometimes town meetings or general assemblies. Several important issues are aired, but basically we do not have what I would like to see as community video. And it's not a question of being disillusioned, it's a question of reporting more or less what is. As you know, George, ever since my book that I wrote, that I put together after 8 years, after the Lebanon War and the death of my son, Survival is Not Enough. After that came out, I could go back to photography, and I did an exhibit that I would love to show elsewhere, which I call Dialogue with Photographers, and you know about that. I've sent you actually the material at the time. My dialogue with 60 photographers from the history of photography over 150 years. The exhibit actually contains frames with 2 pictures, 2 photographs, and each one is one of the great photographers, and one is mine relating to the other photograph. Maybe if space will allow, I will include in this tape some of the work that I've done, including some of the frames from that exhibit. When I finished with that exhibit and the book, which, by the way, has now been translated, and as you know, I'm fortunate that there is someone in this country that's editing it and looking for publisher, co-publisher to a publisher that in this country is willing to do it. When I finished those 2 projects, I've spent a lot of time carrying out workshops mainly on the topic of photography as a way of coping with loss. And I've been very fortunate to have many people share with me the photographs or the films that they made or the photographs that they have brought to the workshops and that have really helped them cope with loss of many types. One of the very meaningful workshops I've carried out with people who support group of cancer ill people, both in kibbutzim and in Tel Aviv, and I've carried these workshops out with students of photography, with kibbutz members, with literary groups, with elder people here in the Lower Galilee. And actually I have enough material, or more than enough material, to put out a book and a video that will accompany this book. Fortunately, I've been asked by the educational television to do a series on some of the results of the work that I'm doing. That is something that I am very hopeful about and looking forward to. And as I told Peter at the beginning of this tape, I've concluded working or doing my part on Peace Chronicles, which was a very meaningful experience for me, in as much as it brought me back to active video and to really do what I'm doing right now, which of course seems not difficult, but actually is a different way of thinking about video, television, photography. The experience of working, making a film with three Palestinians and another two Israelis telling our stories was extremely interesting, and actually I learned a lot about myself. And I would say that the making of this film, documenting the peace process, actually the making of the film, my participating in this film, was instrumental in work for peace that perhaps would not be done otherwise. And let me give an example, and again, maybe I will show some of this later on in action, or best you would see it in the movie when it comes out, beginning of next year. An example is that on every one of the crucial dates, and the dates were the 13th of September 1933, when the first agreement was signed in front of the White House on the lawn. The 13th of December 1933, when actually the Israeli army was supposed to leave Gaza and Jericho, but did not, and it was a very sad day. Then in January, when I think it was the 17th of January, when Assad and Clinton shook hands, and there was hope that there would be a beginning of a peace process with Syria. And last but not least, the signing of the peace agreement in Egypt on the 4th of May, 1994. On each one of these occasions, in my kibbutz, I saw to it that there would be more than what would have happened had I not been working on this movie, because I had done street interviews with people and asked them what was going on in their minds, what did they think, what did they believe, what did they hope on these various days. And in that way, I activated other people who perhaps, because the kibbutz is so far away from the center of things, even though television and radio and newspapers come every day and do enter the minds and the houses of people, that was an example. Another example was after that horrid, terrible, unexcusable massacre in Hebron by Goldstein, the children of the 7th grade here in Kibbutz Ein Dor on their own volition, decided that they wanted to write letters of condolence to students, Arab students in neighboring villages, and I documented this exchange of letters. And when the Arab woman teacher Raida came with the letter that she brought back from her village, that was part of the documentation. And the actual documentation in a class and with people, as you know better than I do, it sheds a little more light, it makes a little more important whatever deed is being done. But I was very honored to actually be part of this little exchange of empathy in that very difficult period, those very difficult days. Something else that came through in the Peace Chronicles, in my part, is the continuation of the dialogue that I'm carrying on now for more than 2 years with my Palestinian friend, who up to this very moment I am not allowed to mention his name because he is threatened by fundamentalists. He is a peace-loving man and a wonderful person, warm, intelligent. He was a teacher for many years. He's now on pension, as we call it, retired. And he works, of course, because he's got to continue to support his family. But this communication, this dialogue between us has accumulated or is accumulated, is expressed in many, many letters. And when the time comes, I hope that I will be able to publish this with his full consent and his full name. It's, I would say, almost a love story between two people who are on the other side of the border. And I will repeat now how this all began. After my book, Survival is Not Enough, was published, there was a radio program in which two professors and a friend of mine and myself discussed the book. The names were Professor Immanuel Sivan, Professor Marian Rabinovich, Raya Harnig, and myself. And we actually discussed the book for an hour, and it was aired on Saturday afternoon. And this man, who we call Mr. H, although he's a Palestinian, he is an English teacher, but the language is one of his great loves, and he likes the Hebrew language very much, and so he listens a lot to radio and television. And he heard this program. The interesting thing is that only lately, very recently, when finally he came to visit me once and only once, a few months ago, he disclosed what was so special about that day, that he met me through this program. It was a curfew, and his two boys were playing football in the yard, their own yard, and the ball went out into the street, and the soldiers, and the boy ran after the ball, and the soldiers picked him up for disobeying the curfew orders, and he found himself under arrest. And here the father is coming home from trying to bail him out, and it's very expensive, and he's not a wealthy person. And he's very, very disillusioned and very, very down. And here he comes home and he just, by chance, opens up this program where he hears me telling about what I did or how I confronted the greatest loss of all, the loss of my son. And it so affected him that he caught himself and he found himself thinking that if I could uh, cope in my way with the loss of my son, then he would find a way uh, to cope with the troubles that he has as a Palestinian and in the situation that he is given. And so he wrote me a letter, a beautiful letter, which I think I've sent you, in which one of the sentences that I'm not quoting exactly is that although I am an Arab, I am first and foremost a father, and the pain of loss of a son is universal, and I sympathize with you, and I stretch out my hand in friendship and hope that you will receive me. And ever since then, we've been talking in letters, and recently he has a phone, and so we speak by phone. And true, it's just one-to-one, just man-to-man, and in this sea of violence that surrounds us, and this continual zigzag, this continual, what should I say, going to the heights of hope and then terror and killing and despair. Between hope and despair, that's where we are. When actually so many people have lost their lives, and what am I saying? I'm saying that I really believe that this relationship, this friendship that has developed between one Palestinian father, one Israeli father, for me, his continual belief in peace, despite all the antagonistic surroundings that he has and difficulties, is very meaningful to me and gives me a lot of strength, because when all is said and done, if there will be peace, and I believe it will happen because I don't see any other possibility of life going on here in the Middle East and in Israel's surroundings without peace, in the long run it will be as a result of people one-to-one relating, talking, discussing, arguing, but relating. And there's something else that I'm active and plan to be more active in the coming months. I've participated in some workshops that were done by Dr. Marsha Rosenberg from the United States, who is established in over 15 countries, nonprofit groups of people who learn and try to teach nonviolent communication. Recently, he's going to be here next month actually, and I plan to be with him and continue the contact and continue meeting with people who are devoting time to this way of trying to lessen the violence that surrounds us. But recently something very interesting and optimistic has happened as far as I'm concerned, and that is a man by the name of Yuval Dor has learned and studied and taken in this way of approach, this technique, this approach of nonviolent communication, and he's done a wonderful thing with it. He has actually filled it with Hebrew content. By Hebrew, I mean he has taken the Hebrew language, which I am learning after over 60 years of speaking, reading, and writing the language, is an extremely wealthy language. And using the Hebrew language, which is, like all languages, a means of communication, he's developed a very special approach based on the Hebrew word, the Hebrew root. And in due time, I will gladly elaborate on this. And I'm trying to be as helpful as I can. He's organizing workshops with teachers, which is extremely important, with parents. I'm going to bring also a group of Jewish and Arab people who are interested in learning this together. And I find that that's something that I would like to devote my time to. So, all in all, I am kept busy, and I suppose one of the things that keeps me very busy is the amount of context that I've established through my life as I go from topic to topic and develop friendships with people. And I find that I serve in a way as a matchmaker between people who have different qualities and can be helped by others, and I create that contact. And so my very prolific letter writing is of some use. Right now, one of the things that I'm involved in is it's got to do with a contact that I've made with a young woman who suffers from multiple sclerosis. And since she cannot walk and she cannot write, but she can talk into a tape recorder, a tape, I've suggested to her, and she has accepted, writing, that is, telling her story in tape. And whenever she finishes her diary, her story, she sends me the tape, and I transcribe it, I put it on my computer, my word processor, and as time went on, I had a body of work. She had enough to say that it's time to publish this. And so she was very interested in it, and I found a very able and sensitive editor, and now it's in the process of being worked on, and it will be published. I've spent endless hours trying to understand her words, because as time goes on, it's more and more difficult to understand her speech. But I understand it, even though it takes me time. And I am very, very honored to be able to learn so much from this woman who suffers from a perpetual loss, an ongoing loss of her physical abilities. And yet, she is a fighter. She is active. She has much to offer, much to say to other people who are facing such difficulties physically, emotionally. And I know that this diary, this book, this document, not only is very important for her because it is a way of giving her some additional reason to continue, not to give up, but I'm sure that it will be of importance to not only people who are facing such loss, but people who work with others. And I'm very excited and very happy that I have been instrumental in bringing this book to light. It will take time. I want to say that despite her difficulties, she devotes a day a week to teach blind young children art. During the period of her sickness, she studied art therapy, social work, and she's very intelligent and very, very able to express her thoughts and her feelings. And I hope that it will come out and be translated so that maybe I can share that with you as well. I said something about the various connections that I've established with people. And this is a good example because of my ongoing relationship with this woman. She invited me a couple weeks ago to meet another person who has MS. Art. During the period of her sickness, she studied art therapy, social work, and she's very intelligent and very, very able to express her thoughts and her feelings. And I hope that it will come out and be translated so that maybe I can share that with you as well. I said something about the various connections that I've established with people. And this is a good example because of my ongoing relationship with this woman. She invited me a couple weeks ago to meet another person who has MS. Actually, she's, I suppose, well known in the United States. Angelina Hecking, who has put out a book, Seeds of Light, and actually she, after she was diagnosed as having MS, and she was in the wheelchair, because of her optimism and her ability to cope in various ways, which I will tell in a minute. Today she is teaching Tai Chi in the 4 classes in San Francisco, and she has put out a book of photography that I said, Seeds of Light, self-portrait. And she came to this country because she had opened an exhibit in Jerusalem, in the foyer of the Jerusalem Theater. And because of my relationship with this woman here in the country, I was very, very fortunate to meet Angelina. And not only because of the way that she pulled herself out of the wheelchair, actually, with Tai Chi, but in addition, it was very important for me, after working for 3 years on the topic of the use of photography as a way of coping with loss, to see that marvelous, wonderful, unbelievable album of hers, which is a self-portrait that she had documented her own, I would call it revival, her own, the stages of coming out from deep fear and agony and hopelessness to a state of, I would say, optimism and giving a lot to other people. And this all comes out in a wonderful, wonderful album that she has done. So I will stop at this point and try to think of how to continue later, if there's more room on this tape. And hopefully I will hear from you, George, and of course from you, Peter. I'm not sure that I've satisfied you, Peter, about the international, and perhaps I will come back later. But if not, I'm signing off now, and I will fill in with other material from my archives. So, shalom for the time being. At the beginning of this tape, I spoke about the beautiful event that's going to take place. At the beginning of this tape, I spoke about the beautiful event that's going to take place in our archaeological museum. And here's the invitation. As you can see, it's both in Hebrew and in Arabic, because there will be many Arabs from the surrounding villages and towns. I'd like to translate a few of the words that are said here. The name, you are invited to the official opening of the exhibit in our archaeological museum, a time to war and a time to peace, or and here are some of the events that are going to take place. In the program, there will be a visit to see war implements and game implements in the old world, and the game as an alternative to war. There will be olive oil, pure olive oil made in our bit bud, which is where olive oil is made. There will be games seeing peace. Children and parents will play games of peace. There will be the lighting of the fifth candle of the Hanukkah, and there'll be an audio-visual program seeing peace, scenery and people from Syria and Jordan. And I thought that it would be interesting to see this invitation as it is prepared by us. I'd like to add one more event that has to do with perhaps the last time we sang the International in Indore, and since it was a very special occasion, I'd like to tell a few things about it. It was the 1st of May, 1993, before the peace process began, and on that particular occasion, we invited, as I said before, we invited representatives of all the Arab communities in our surrounding, and of course, members of our kibbutz. But we had another very honorable guest at this occasion, one of the pioneers of peace in the Middle East, I hope known to you as well, A.B. Natan, who had spent months in jail recently because of his daring to speak with Arafat before it was agreed upon by the government. And it was very nice to have him a guest in what could be called a peace rally, but it was the 1st of May in Kibbutz Indore. This is documented by our video, and actually in this very room I interviewed A.B. Natan and actually asked him one question, that is, where did he get the courage and where did he get the consistent drive to do all he could, even endanger his life, for the cause of peace. The very interesting part of the evening was we invited an Israel composer who has written songs in Hebrew and in Arabic, and there was an Arab singer who sang some of these songs, and actually it was another way of showing that it is possible to live together in peace in this country. And at this rally in Kibbutz Indore, we sang the International. That was the last time that I recall singing it. And what will be in the future is to be seen. Hopefully some of the words of this song will materialize in our days. The words that this will be the last battle, the last war, something so many people have wished and has not come to life yet. I'll conclude this part of the tape by taking a few pictures of what is in our room, even though the room is not so well organized right now, but we'll do the best we can so that you'll see where Rama and myself live and where I do some of my work by the computer. I have two more places where I do my work. One is what I call my work room, which is actually was a dark room. Today it's an archive as well as a study. And again, if there's place, I will show some video footage from there. And one more place is our video studio, where I do some of the work presently. So I'll sign off at this stage again, and we'll come back later. I'm back again. It's 10:53, 27th of 11, November, 1994. I'm looking outside my door. I can hear from far away the factory. It's a cable factory. Close to 200 people work there. It actually supports the kibbutz and has done so for the past 26, 27 years. I've worked there 15, 17 years by a machine, by an extruder, and done a lot of my photography during those years. These street lights are new. There's a lot of light outside now. New road. And there'll be scenes in the daytime. When I come into my house, this, by the way, is my wife's vehicle. And when I come into the house, on the door, there is shalom, peace, hopefully. This is my corner, where I spend many hours. Computer, printer, and tapes. I'm a compulsory documentary. These tapes are some of the things I've done recently. The peace process, the MS diaries, nonviolent communication. These are some of the files. I've got a dark room or an archive, many more, just to make sure that, Peter, you'll see that you're on my list. You can see that Peter Miller is here, and many others. On the door entering my house, some more peace. We hoped that 1991 would be the year for peace, but as fate would have it, it took some more years and a lot more pain. I believe you've seen my New Year's card, which I've sent to hundreds of people. Talk and make peace this year 1994, 95, Tisha B'Av will make the difference. And I hope it will. Here's another peace endeavor. Palestine-Israel Journal, the first joint project, a magazine put out by Palestinians and Israeli peace lovers, working together, creating a dialogue. This is actually Rama's corner. She takes care of the plants. She takes care of the house. She's not feeling too well tonight. As we enter the room, the first thing that we see is the mirror with our grandchildren. We have 10 grandchildren. We have 3 children. And here is David and Rachel, Naomi and Shaul's children in the United States. These are Tamar and David's children. They're in France. Ela, Maya, Lital, and Modi. And these are Gilad and Tzippi's children here in Israel. Tom, Hadass, Merav, and Shai. The wall of plates, the daily news, flowers from our garden, our modest kitchen. Today is the first night of Hanukkah. This is a lamp that my daughter Naomi made. She's a ceramist. And on the Frigidaire, some of the grandchildren's pictures. This is our living room. Again, I'll start with the pictures. This is Yaron's corner. This is the flower that Rama tends to for 12 and a half years every day. There's always a flower. Here Yaron, who remained young as he was at the age of 21 and a half. Killed on the 6th of June, 1982, on the before, the needless Lebanon War. Actually, these rocks we brought home from the before. This is the family corner. Here we see Gilad with our first granddaughter, Hadass. In the middle is Yaron, Naomi, and Tamar. This is 13 years ago, 14 years ago. These are Rama's parents. Rama. Her sister. My mother, who died at the age of 90 in Jerusalem. My father, whom I never knew, who was killed in an accident 6 months before I was born, May 1921. These are my mother's parents. This is a New Year's card when we lived in Tel Aviv in 1930. My mother, Tzvi, my elder brother, Aaron, and myself. This is a picture we received from France. This old rabbi was in my mother's room for many years. These are two wonderful portraits. Very, very wonderful photographer, Nirani, who walked around this land at the beginning of the century and took pictures of people. Above photographs, that's a photograph from a friend, painting from a young girl in the kibbutz. Some of my own photographs in the old city. The deal, the boy and the camel, sheep. Very special silk painting done by a friend Shir. She's done a lot of work and thought a lot about Iran. She includes Iran in many of her pictures. There he is standing there on the side. I'll turn this light off for a minute. It's an original painting by Gershon called All Our Soldiers. I sent him a book we put out when Yaron was killed a year after. And he sent us this picture and wrote him back without words. It says enough. These are some of the pictures that we like. There's a story to each one. box. There's a lot to tell about every item in the room like this. I'll just end with some piece that Yaron made when he was 10 years old. I call him Smiley. Yaron never lived to smile enough. מזמן רציתי להזמין את החברים לבוא לחדר עבודה שלי, ואולם החדר הוא צפוף מאוד כפי שיתברר בהמשך, ולכן אני מזמין אתכם דרך הוידאו לטייל איתי כאן בחדר, לראות את פחות או יותר סיכום עבודות שלי במשך יותר מ-25 שנה. על השולחן הזה מונחים כמה ספרים שאני בכולם מופיע. הספר הזה, אני כורדי, אני רואה כספר החשוב ביותר שעשיתי, כמובן חברים יודעים, שזה הספר על יהודי כורדיסטן שהתיישבו בירדנה ובית יוסף. הספר לא די לשרוד, זהו סיכום של 9 שנים של יומנים לאחר מלחמת לבנון, שבו הבן שלי ירון נהרג. בדברים האחרים, בספר הזה, הישראלים, ספר שבו 50 וכמה צלמים ביום אחד תראו את ישראל, מופיעים כ-15 צילומים שלי, כולל הצילום הזה. הספר הזה שיצא ל-30 למדינת ישראל, גם כן כולל ספרים שלי, צילומים שלי, כולל גם את התמונה הזאת של הקיבוץ, דרך השקדיות והתבור. ופה אפשר לראות בכניסה, כן, אפשר לראות את התמונה הזאת שייצגה את קיבוצנו, אבל ייצגה את העבודה שלי במוזיאון ישראל. ב-1974 הייתה התוכנית הראשונה של התערוכה הראשונה של צלמים במוזיאון, ואני זכיתי להציג בעצם את הקיבוץ שלנו, כן, עם התמונה בפרדס, בסבתות וכולי. ואחרון, או לפני אחרון, בספר הזה על הקיבוץ